call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Invocation by Seventh-day Adventists. Okay, now here, roll call, please.
Sabers. Yes. Rice.
Here.
Dosher. McCardle.
Here.
Barrington.
Here.
Allen.
Here.
Charks.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Approval of consent agenda items. Items appearing on a consent agenda may be removed by a city council member for discussion at the beginning of the formal agenda items. Is there anything you wish to remove? Okay.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Motion by Mrs. Charks.
Second.
Second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion?
Mayor, as part of the agenda, do you want to note the item that will be removed for the plat?
Oh, thank you. I'll do that right after this. Okay. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address him? Roll call.
Dosher. McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington.
Aye.
Allen.
Aye.
Charks.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
I apologize, but I forgot to remove one item from the agenda. Item 14, action to approve resolution R 2020-75 has been pulled from our agenda, so it will not be part of tonight's meeting. Citizens input. If you need to address the mayor and members of the city council on an item that was not on the agenda, excluding personnel items, please come forward to the podium, state your name and your concern. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Items will be considered, but no action will be taken at this time. Is there anybody who wishes to address council? Council have any items?
I have one. I'd just like to say it was nice driving home the other night, and I went over the viaduct, and I kept going all the way out by Bernite, and didn't have to hit a stop roadblock, so it was nice to have that road open.
Sanborn Street is open.
Sanborn is open.
I want to thank the staff for getting this ready tonight on short notice to be able to have the meeting in Corn Palace so we can socially distance for the number of people who want to speak to us tonight. So Doug, thank you to you and your staff, and Ms. Elwine for your assistance in it.
Question on Sanborn. Any idea when the street lights will be in and that final stuff, or will that all be after winter? I was asked, how come it's so dark when I drive down?
It is dark.
Joe Schrader, city engineer. We're currently waiting on Northwestern Energy to get those poles in. They were supposed to be here a couple weeks ago, but with COVID, they're having issues getting the materials. We've been told they should be here within the next week or two, but we've heard that a couple
If they
times.
arrive, can they be put in bad weather?
Yep. So once they get them here, they think they'll have them up in a couple days.
Okay.
Joe, another question while you're up there. Been hearing comments about the road itself seems to be a little bit uneven when you go through the intersections. Is that designed that way, or just kind of turned out that way?
No, it was designed that way. Before, Sanborn was extremely flat, which also contributed to some of the flooding issues that were at some of the intersections. So they were propped up a little bit to make sure that drainage gets to the inlets on the side streets.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Anybody else?
Stephanie, did you want to comment on sales tax? To me, it's kind of good news. First and second penny were real close, which is better than I thought we would be last summer when we got to November. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Right, and I was going to just pull this up if you're interested. Actually, first and second penny, as Michelle's report shows, that we are actually above last year's collections just slightly right now. I think it was 0.35%. I can't see it now, sorry. But if you remember, our 2020 budget included a 5%
Yep.
decrease, so we're currently projected to meet the revenue as long as nothing drastic changes in November and December. But third penny, we continue to be low. We still look like at most about a 50% loss of where the revenue budget was.
50.
$50,000.
Not
Not
50%.
50%, excuse
Okay.
me, a $50,000 under what budget is.
Almost gave me a heart attack.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, anything else? Okay, COVID update, current impacts at Avera Health in Mitchell. This is Rochelle Ryder.
My name is Rochelle Ryder. I've been a nurse since 1989 and I've worked in Mitchell since 1993. I've been in my current role as Vice President of Patient Services at Avera Queen of Peace Hospital since 2007. I've also served as the Avera Mitchell Region Incident Commander since this began in March. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a COVID update at tonight's meeting. As many of you know, both South Dakota and Davison County COVID statistics have not only risen since Dr. Rockwell presented to the City Council 2 weeks ago, they have escalated. The number of patients hospitalized for COVID in South Dakota today is 553. That's 132 more than November 1st. There are 19,360 active cases in South Dakota today, people we know are capable of spreading COVID. That is 6,222 more active cases than on November 1st. South Dakota has recorded 644 COVID deaths to date. That's 207 more lives lost to this novel virus since the first of the month. As of today, Davison County has 1,870 positive cases, up 771 since November 1st. Avera Queen of Peace Hospital and the Avera Grassland Collection Center sent 1,410 swabs for PCR testing in the last 2 weeks of October. 404 were positive, which is a 29% positivity rate. 5% is a good rate. We were at 29. Then in the first 2 weeks of November, 605 out of 1,588 swabs were positive, and that's a 38% positivity rate. All of these numbers are going in the wrong direction despite an aggressive masking campaign. COVID hospitalizations typically lag infection by a couple of weeks, so seeing the positive cases climb is alarming when many of our affected healthcare workers are already becoming physically and emotionally depleted. Since our first positive COVID test result on March 10th, we developed a step-by-step surge plan to include more bed capacity, more staff, and more equipment. We have adapted and executed those plans. We have opened up more patient care spaces on 2nd. We've doubled up some rooms. We've ordered more IV pumps, cardiac monitors, and respiratory equipment. We have also reassigned over 30 nursing staff from the clinic, OR, and offices to work in acute care. This morning, we had 22 COVID patients in the hospital in our 8-bed ICU and 2 closed COVID units, the east and west wings of the medical surgical unit on 2nd floor. 3 spaces now filled with COVID patients. We also could continue to care for non-COVID patients on our south med-surg hallway, and select female patients and children are now being placed on the women's center on 3rd floor. We've added staff to the emergency department, which is always open for our COVID and non-COVID emergencies, and we want to be clear about that. We want patients to come to the emergency department for any type of emergency. We are caring for more than twice our average patient volumes, and the COVID patients are sicker and much more time intense than a typical ICU or medical non-COVID patient. For example, if a patient needs to be placed in the prone position or on their stomach to ease the work of breathing, it takes 4 to 6 staff to physically perform this while protecting the respiratory support, multiple IV lines, cardiac and oxygen monitoring cables, and Foley catheters so nothing is dislodged. All this work is done while wearing a gown and a PAPR hood with a hose and a battery pack around the waist, which can be hot and uncomfortable. COVID patients have constant IVs running in multiple lines. To give you an idea of the medication regimen of COVID patients, last February, the number of inpatient medications we administered on any given day at Avera Queen of Peace Hospital rarely hit 300. Today, we are administering over 800 inpatient medications every day. People are weary of the COVID topic. So are we. While some in our community go about their daily lives seemingly unaffected, our healthcare workers can't look away. Our patients are unusually sick. Intubations and death from COVID are happening in our hospital and to our community members. Our physicians continue to fine-tune the treatment plans for COVID patients and reduce the death rate. Our healthcare team is doing amazing work. Last week, I asked the team to open up the old swing bed nurses station as the next preparation step in our surge plan. That very day, plant operations helped clear out storage, fix toilets, and move in beds. Housekeeping cleaned the rooms and hung the privacy curtains. Nutrition services, the supply room, laundry, and pharmacy went about stocking the area, and IT brought down computers and a printer for the nurses station. It's impressive how nimble we can be and how much teamwork there has been throughout this challenging time. ICU beds are in high demand, and at times there's a waiting list for an ICU bed across multiple hospitals. We sometimes need to hold patients in the emergency department while we wait for a discharge and a staffed bed. We can open up even more beds and spaces in the hospital, but we need staff to provide specialized care. Respiratory therapists, nurses, physicians, lab, radiology, they're all finite resources. With the degree of community spread of COVID we are experiencing, like many other businesses, the amount of unplanned time off is higher right now. The stress, long shifts, and extra shifts are taking a toll on our healthcare workers' physical, mental, and emotional well-being. We are frequently overwhelmed and anxious about how much worse this is going to get before we bend the curve. Remember, we are still heading up. What will happen with influenza and other winter ailments this year? And how long before their workloads and schedules become more manageable and not less? Our healthcare workers are pleading that we get the word out to city leaders and the community on what is going on inside the walls of the hospital to help the public understand the seriousness of the situation we are in. When staff working with COVID patients see the lack of masking, hear conversations denying the COVID statistics, or read social media posts that question the COVID crisis, it adds to their stress and sleeplessness. We don't want our city leaders and community members to look back and say, we wish we would have known. So we've been sharing local statistics and aggressively promoting masking for a number of weeks now, on the radio, newspaper, social media, and here again tonight. Most here have heard about the Mask Up South Dakota campaign supported by the 3 health systems, South Dakota State Medical Association, South Dakota Nurses Association, South Dakota Association of Healthcare Organizations, and other prominent professional organizations. The CDC gives us recommendations for slowing the spread of COVID, and we need to do all of them to make an impact. Out of respect for our frontline caregivers, Avera supports a healthy workforce and keeping businesses and schools open. The path to this is through practicing good hygiene, social distancing, and wearing masks. Avera supports masking, and in the communities considering mask mandates, we support this measure. This is consistent with Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC, which has affirmed that wearing masks can help communities slow the spread of COVID-19 when worn consistently and correctly by a majority of people in public settings. Lastly, healthcare workers are the community's most valuable and limited resource right now, and we should all work together to protect them. For those who don't fully buy into the efficacy of masking to prevent COVID transmission, please consider masking as a symbol of unity, as a gesture of kindness, and as a way you can show your support of healthcare personnel who are working so hard to take care of your families, friends, and neighbors right now. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide an update tonight.
Okay, questions?
Rochelle, at our last meeting, Dr. Rockwell did a presentation, and she stopped short of requesting a mandate for masks. Would you be requesting that we enact a masking mandate as a hospital system?
If a masking mandate comes before the city council, we support the masking mandate.
Okay.
We've, like I said, we've aggressively been pushing masking, and we're not seeing it. We've been sharing the statistics, and people can see on social media, on the news, what's happening. And for whatever reason, people are not heeding masking in the numbers that they should in order to make a difference. And there's consequences to that. And I just don't think people understand that until it's too late.
I have a quick question. Have you guys talked to the governor's office? I mean, as many messages as I got today, if the governor got that many a day, I mean, it should be an indication of how people feel. So I just, as
Yes,
the
we
hospital
have.
reached out to the governor, and
She knows.
sometimes I wonder.
The Mask Up South Dakota would be one example of how many people got behind that campaign. I mean, like Dr. Rockwell said 2 weeks ago, how often do you get the 3 health systems to agree and put their name on something? That was a big statement there. But yes, she does know.
Rochelle, and really appreciate sending the weekly information out to us. I know I believe it goes to Stephanie and then gets out to us. So that's very good information to watch, and so do appreciate that.
Sure, I'll continue.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you.
Yep.
Are you going to be here for, okay. Okay. Item number 9, first reading on ordinance O-2020-13, an emergency ordinance to require wearing cloth face coverings in certain locations due to COVID-19. Do you want to start with this, Mr. Johnson?
Sure, I can start it off here. I was asked to prepare an ordinance based off of prior discussions from the City Council, limited in scope just to requiring masks in city facilities. The ordinance I bring before you tonight.
I don't think they can hear you.
Doug, I don't know, maybe.
There you go.
All right, I'll keep it real close then. So the scope of the ordinance at this point is just requiring masks indoor and at indoor city-owned facilities. It specifies the type and how the mask is supposed to be worn, and it does provide a couple of exceptions, provides penalties, the effective period, and leaves open the possibility for the mayor to do executive orders. But really the ordinance is kind of a placeholder, as I expect the council will decide tonight what they want the scope to actually be on this ordinance. I could see it changing locations, exceptions. Really, it's up to the council what they want the final version of the ordinance to be, but I just wanted to provide the starting off point from past discussions.
Okay. One thing I want to point out as we get going here, you in the audience will have a chance to speak to it. However, we're going to limit your speaking to 5 minutes per person. One time up. We ask that you don't come up and say the same thing the other person did. Bring new evidence or new comments forward if you want to come and speak. We don't want to hear the same words over and over and over. We know this is going to be a very emotional issue. People on both sides of the fence as far as how this ordinance goes. So we would ask your indulgence in that, please. So, okay.
Could I also request that when people come up to give their testimony or talk, that they not only tell us their name, but where they live so that we know whose ward they're in? Please?
Okay. Can you get the timer up on the screen? Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
I think Cody Music had a statement that he wanted to
I
make.
can now. Okay.
Cody Music, Ward 4. Good evening, Council and Mayor. We are here tonight to call on Mayor Bob Everson to immediately implement citywide masking and distancing policies, allowing for reasonable exceptions. At this point, masks in city facilities are not nearly enough. In Davison County, our total cases have gone up 82% since the end of October, just over 2 weeks ago. Our average daily cases have jumped from around 20 per day to around 60 per day. Normalized, we are routinely averaging 2.5 to 3 times the number of daily cases as Brookings, a city which has a masking policy in place. As of today, the New York Times has us listed as the 14th worst county in the entire country for COVID-19 cases per capita over the last 7 days. As one of the owners of Innovative Systems, it is getting increasingly hard to run a functioning business when 5 to 10% of our workforce is out sick with COVID-19 or in quarantine each week. What are businesses that cannot work from home supposed to do? What will happen when more employees get sick or schools are forced to close due to uncontrolled community spread? We cannot effectively run our businesses without healthy employees. Mayor Everson has the authority to implement citywide masking and distancing policies effective immediately. We do not have the luxury of time, and we cannot afford to wait any longer. This is not an unpopular proposal. I have sent you each a letter with over 400 names signed on in support of these same policies. I have spoken with numerous businesses that have felt the effects and have asked for immediate change. I have spoken to numerous healthcare workers that have expressed to me just how dire our current situation is. In the Daily Republic, Dr. Teresa Campbell wrote, "The health community is becoming overwhelmed," and then she followed with a terrifying warning. Projections for the next month are predicting a 50 to 100% increase in cases. What will we do when all of our healthcare workers are out sick and no one is available to care for us? You may hear some people claim tonight that masks do not work. I'm certainly not a medical expert, and you shouldn't get your health advice from me. However, I ask you, do you believe that our local doctors and our local healthcare system is lying to you? They have been pleading with us to wear masks day in and day out. We delivered over half a page full of medical signatures to you in favor of these policies. You may hear some people claim that these policies are unconstitutional. However, we are not asking you to implement anything that has not already been vetted and implemented in other cities in our state. We have tried the hands-off approach for months. It is not working. Our schools have done their part, requiring masks and doing what it takes to keep our students and teachers safe. If Mayor Everson and this council fail to act immediately, the people of Mitchell will remember who is responsible for their businesses being closed due to lack of healthy employees and their kids being forced to learn remotely. Mayor Everson has the authority to act immediately and effectively. We do not have any time to waste. This is an emergency situation. We need our leadership to step up and protect our community. Our healthcare workers will remember who had their backs when things got tough. Mayor Everson, we ask that you immediately implement citywide masking and distancing policies, allowing for reasonable exceptions. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Come on up.
Forgive me, I can't hear everything. I'm deaf in one ear and can't hear out of the other, so there were some things that I missed out of the previous speakers. So if I repeat or do something, forgive me. My name is Dwight Stadler. I live at 700 West 7th Avenue here in Mitchell. And good evening, city councilors and mayor. As a reminder from a previous meeting, COVID-19 is a virus, and CDC recognizes it as an airborne pathogen. Virus airborne particulates are 0.1 micron or less in size. 1 micron is 1/1,000,000th of a meter. Thus, COVID particulates are smaller, 1/10 of 1/1,000,000th. They travel greater distances and remain in the air for approximately 25 minutes for up to 2+ hours. The loose-fitting face masks the general public is using offer no protection against airborne pathogens because they do not provide an effective seal against entry. Viral airborne pathogen particulates both penetrate and cling to cloth masks and enter around the loose edges of the mask. The general public wears the same mask from location to location and person to person. They do not dispose of such masks like the medical community after each contact, nor can they afford the cost of stockpiling such a supply to do so. In the case of cloth masks, the public does not even launder such masks on a daily basis, much less between contacts. Entry of the virus is through mucous membranes, primarily through the nose and mouth, but the masks do not protect the eyes. A recent study showed that 84% of those getting COVID wore masks. Hand washing is the #1 prevention against germ transmission. It happens. People scratch their private parts, pick their noses, fail to wash their hands after using the restroom, cough and sneeze into their hands and fail to wash or sanitize their hands afterwards. Everyone touches doorknobs, handles, toilet and urinal handles, work surfaces, computer keyboards and mice, car door handles, steering wheels, and a plethora of grocery items in the grocery store without sanitizing their hands first or in between. Some points to consider. If masks deemed acceptable for the general public are so effective, why do medical facilities and direct care providers need N95 masks instead? Why don't the medical community and mainstream media and politicians talk about the survival rate of 94% and greater from COVID? The survival rate increases with younger ages. Why is this information censored? Why don't the medical community, media, and politicians address the recovery numbers while citing case increases? Or discuss how the increase in testing will inherently result in more cases identified, all the while the mortality rate remains low and relatively stable? The WHO, CDC, and the entire medical community have been inconsistent in their statements and guidelines. Physicians and experts disagree, as you will see tonight as well. WHO said lockdowns are unnecessary. The CDC director is on video holding a mask the general public wears, stating it is ineffective. In 2009-2010, the H1N1 virus pandemic occurred worldwide. It was a new strain of flu, and it took months before vaccination was developed. In 2014-2016, the Ebola virus epidemic occurred. Ebola is exponentially worse and required full hazmat suits, patient isolation, extreme biohazardous disposal procedures in medical facilities. Yet for either case, no restrictions, no lockdowns, no mask mandates, no social distancing were imposed. Another point, if masks are mandated and enforced through arrests and convictions, what impact do you think that will have on normal law-abiding citizens' criminal history? People who've never committed a crime. What would you consider such draconian measures to be? Fascist? You should know the devastating economic impact of oppressive restrictions on businesses and the run on and disruption to the supply chain for grocery products and other products during the initial outbreak of COVID. Why would any rational public official repeat such repressive and economically devastating restrictions again? Mandating the use of masks really isn't going to stop or even reduce the spread. New studies are now showing mask wearing is actually contributing to the spread of COVID, not suppressing it. In fact, public education about personal hygiene, hand washing, and disinfection is going to go a whole lot further than a Band-Aid approach by wearing masks. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the City Council. I serve as the president at Dakota Wesleyan University. My name is Amy Novak, and I represent Ward 1. I speak on behalf of the DW Board of Trustees and the entire Wesleyan community in support of a mask mandate. I do so because I know from experience that these sort of measures work. Over the course of the past semester, the Wesleyan community, a community of more than 1,000 individuals, worked diligently to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 on our campus. We required masks. We created physical distancing in the classroom. We modified practices in athletics and the fine and performing arts. We limited the size of classes and other gatherings, and we installed hand sanitizing stations across campus. We know these efforts made a difference. While we experienced positive cases on campus, we did succeed in containing these outbreaks through the use of testing, quarantining, isolation, and the additional safety measures I have just listed. But to be clear, it was not an option to wear a mask on our campus. It was a mandate. DW's 900 students and 150 staff and faculty have a significant economic impact on the Mitchell community. In any given year, that impact totals well over $30 million in local investment in our economy. As of today, unfortunately, we have the highest positivity and quarantine rate since the onset of the virus. This caseload we have experienced recently, we believe, is due in large part to the fact that over 250 of our students work in the Mitchell community, and that community infection rate has come directly to our campus, causing the surge. This situation led today to an administrative decision to move more of our classes to remote learning, and students who are not winter sport athletes will return home on Friday. We will not be hosting in-person classes in December in an effort to mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Even though this action is similar to what other universities are doing across the state, it has an economic impact on our community. 900 fewer people will be purchasing products in Mitchell during one of the most critical times of the year. When Dakota Wesleyan feels obligated to send students home or to move to remote learning in an effort to safeguard the health and welfare of students and faculty, our community, the community of Mitchell and South Dakota, grows weaker as a consequence. The critical connections between faculty and students grow weaker because they cannot spend time together in the classroom or laboratory. The preparation of our future healthcare workers grows weaker because we are not able to offer in-person clinicals at Avera or other facilities across the region because of the COVID spread. Our economy grows weaker because we lose money that would normally be spent by students in the local economy. Our local labor force grows weaker because many students aren't here to work in those jobs. And our collective communal life grows weaker because we lose the opportunity to fill up the palace and watch our Tigers play for a national championship slot. Most importantly, when we lack the courage to make important, even unpopular decisions, we critically weaken the foundation of our community, because what we are essentially saying is, my neighbor's health, my neighbor's well-being, indeed my neighbor's life, is not my concern. At the current rate of spread, I can assure you that we will not be permitting fans to watch DW basketball at the Corn Palace, or inviting people to the choir concert on campus, or opening up our track for public use. And on a personal note, I would just say I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the courage that our emergency care providers, the doctors, the teachers, the nurses, the long-term care facility workers, the social workers, the hospice chaplains embody each and every day. A mask mandate is not asking us to make sacrifices of their magnitude at all. Wearing this is a very small gesture that says we honor each other in this community. We're committed to helping each other work through a challenging time, and that collectively we can prioritize the well-being of our citizens and our community. A mask mandate is necessary to keep students here, to keep recruitment and retention strong, and to continue to have a vital economy and a caring place to live. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Valerie Johnson, and I am in Ward 3, I do believe. The virus is real. People are getting sick, and some are dying. Most people survive. I'm sure everyone has seen the statistics. But the virus for some people, including myself, is very dangerous. I do have autoimmune diseases and scarred lungs from previous lung injuries and pneumonia. So I'm asking you to think about two things when considering possible mask mandates. First, mandatory masks discriminate against people with communication challenges. Some people rely on facial expressions. If my husband and I were wearing masks and needed to talk to each other, we would need to walk outside because he needs facial expression. Communication is difficult as is, but you put on a mask and it's nearly impossible. Plastic masks have been advised, but the CDC recommends no plastic masks, nor leather masks. So it's really not an option. When they talk about certain exceptions, I think before you mandate masks, you have those exceptions plainly stated. Secondly, we've known about viruses for over 100 years. Viruses are not the same as bacteria, and they cannot be killed with antibiotics. There are still a few physicians who prescribe antibiotics for viral infections, even though they have always known that antibiotics do not work for viruses. It still happens because those physicians are very caring people and they want to make people feel better. And if prescribing an antibiotic will make patients feel emotionally better, even though it won't stop a viral ear infection, they will still prescribe an antibiotic. Once thought to be harmless, a harmless practice, overprescription of antibiotics has led to resistant strains of bacteria, and people are less able to fight infections. And while I'm on that, I just found out today that one of my cousins used to be a nurse, she was an RN for many years in Aberdeen, has got some sort of bacterial pneumonia. She wears her mask faithfully. If masks were an important part of the solution to stopping viruses, why have healthcare specialists never encouraged us to wear them in the past? They have prescribed antibiotics, which we've always known don't work, but they have never advised us to wear masks. People die from viruses every year. In the past, there have been days off of school because so many people were sick, not just quarantined because they were exposed to potential virus, but actually sick. We've had really tough years in the past due to viruses, but never before have they suggested wearing masks. And I'm not sure, but that just leaves me somewhat suspicious. Knowing history and current politics, I do question the motivation behind the push for mandatory masks. And I hope that for the sake of our city, you allow people to decide for themselves. And if you do mandate, make sure that you have those exceptions laid out very plainly. I don't feel like telling everyone, my medical history every time I walk in somewhere. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Everson and the City Council for having this item on the agenda this evening and for allowing us to have some public input. My name is Lacey Music, and I'm here as a representative of the Mitchell School Board, as President Olson was unable to attend this evening. You all should have received the letter that I will be reading this evening. And please note that the letter is only signed by 3 of our school board members, as 2 of our board members do work for the City of Mitchell, and wanted to make sure that there was no appearance of a conflict of interest. Dear Mayor Everson and members of the Mitchell City Council, we are writing this letter to urge you to pass a mask mandate for the City of Mitchell for 3 reasons. 1, as members of the Mitchell School Board of Education, we are elected to ensure the students of Mitchell receive the best possible education. That requires that students are in a classroom with a certified teacher. This is impossible to do with the number of COVID cases in our community. Teachers have become ill, students have become ill, and other staff members have become ill. Those cases and absences impact learning. 2, as more members of the community become ill, it becomes increasingly difficult to find enough substitute teachers. We have had the DW students serve as substitutes, along with other employees leaving their positions to fill in for teachers. However, this means that those positions are not filled, thereby leaving a gap in services for our students. And 3, many of the cases of COVID among students and staff are coming from community settings, not from the school. This could be remedied if there were a mask mandate. We are asking you to take seriously the CDC's new information that masks not only protect the person from emitting droplets, but also protect the person from inhaling the droplets. We are alarmed that Davidson County number of active cases on November 13 was 754 cases. Only Minnehaha, Pennington, and Lincoln County have more active cases, and we know that their population is more than ours, thereby making us the county with the highest per capita of active cases. As the Mitchell School District Board of Education, we are proud of all of our students and staff and what they have done in following the board's mandate of masks. Please join us and them in mandating the wearing of masks. Sincerely, President Deb Olson, Dr. Matthew Christiansen, and Lacey Music.
Thank you.
Hello, Reed Bender here. So get the elephant out of the room, huh? What are we going to do? How are we going to enforce it? There's going to be some asshole, well, I will be the asshole that will get arrested, right, for not wearing your mask. How are we going to enforce it? How many people here are in better shape physically now than they were when COVID started? Anybody? If I was mayor, I'd shut down McDonald's and Burger King. I'd force you to eat vegetables, right? The proper nutrition. If we were all healthier, we would all be less likely to die from COVID, right? Who's willing to do what they have to do to become a healthier person so they don't have to die from COVID or the multitude of other things? Obesity is a pre-existing condition, right? Kills people all the time. I work out at the rec center. None of the employees there have been wearing masks. Maybe we should ask them how they feel. I would think if they'd want them, they would wear them. I wake up at 4 a.m. so that I can be there by 4:30-ish. Work out pretty heavy until about 5:30. I like to sit in the sauna, and I like to go in the swimming. Is there going to be someone there at 4 in the morning to stop me from going in there? When they get there at 5:30, are they going to force me to put a mask on while I walk to the pool? Can I take it off in the pool? Why are the schools getting sick? Don't they have masks? Or is it just because of community spread? You can't stop it. Masks aren't going to stop it. Nothing's going to stop it. We're going to keep pushing this fear in our communities, keep causing problems, shutting things down. I keep hearing about bacterial pneumonia. I know 5 people that have had that now. I don't know if it's from masks or not. That's the one thing I'm worried about with my son. Catching something from wearing a mask all day, from touching this mask. I mentioned it several times that I'm a sewer cleaner. I run around cleaning sewers all the time. I don't need to put my hands near my face, ever. I try not to bite my fingernails. No matter how hard I scrub my hands, I'm still going to have fecal matter on them, right? Does anybody remember that SNL skit? Chris Farley they walk into a restaurant and they had these fecal matter glasses. So they can walk in these places and check it out, see where they want to eat at. And they walk in this restaurant and there's fecal matter everywhere. One guy's eating a cheeseburger with fecal on his face. It was a funny skit, Chris Farley, right? When SNL was still funny. There's fecal everywhere. There's disease everywhere. It's everywhere. You can't get away from it. Forcing little children to wear masks all day, I think, is asinine. It's crazy to let these children do it. You know, these are a little bit older adults, some high school kids, they might be responsible enough to wash their hands. I talk to people every day that say they don't wash their masks because they don't care, all right? There's a lot of people that don't care. I go in people's homes all the time. I've been in many of your homes, all right? People are not clean. We should push cleaning our hands. We should push sanitizing things. We should be doing the right thing, but we should push through this. We need to push through this. We're going to keep locking people down. I go to nursing homes. I've been in a couple of them. They're ghost towns. They're stuck in their rooms. They're dying because we know better, right? How long have they been stuck in these rooms, dying? I got a great uncle who just keeps going downhill. Nobody can see him. They got to look out a window. Tap, tap, tap. I've seen him do it. It's kind of sad watching these people die as we continue to promote fear within our communities. And just real quick, as far as DWU, I ran into some kids the other day, a big group of them. They asked me to smoke weed with them.
Thank you.
Maybe that's how it gets passed around.
Go ahead.
Sorry, we're monitoring YouTube comments tonight. I have 2. The first one is Mike, I'm going to say your last name wrong, Catalano. He lives at 606 South Minnesota. I support the mask mandate despite claims being made right now at the meeting. Science shows masks reduce viral spread. I have Evie DeWitt. She didn't say her address, but she says she lives in Ward 3. I would like to strongly urge against any kind of mandates in our city.
Okay.
I'm caught up now.
Thank you.
Hello, Madison Miller. I'm a teacher at Mitchell High School. I want to not only reiterate what those who have just spoken before me have said, but I also want to emphasize my perspective as an educator. I'm an English teacher at Mitchell High School. I'm also the head speech and debate coach. As a debate teacher, I teach my students about fallacies and illogical arguments. I teach them to appreciate science, facts, credible sources, and to listen to the people who know best. As an educator, I am eternally grateful to the leaders on our Mitchell School Board who have stepped up to implement a mask mandate, which was a great show of respect for students and staff safety, and which is working. However, our community strategy, or lack thereof, is failing. As we've heard throughout the night, our numbers in Davison County and South Dakota are horrifying. So I'm now asking for your leadership. A mask mandate is not only completely enforceable, but it is also desired by those who are watching Mitchell businesses, schools, and citizens begin to crumble under the strain of sickness and/or quarantine. I have a class with about 15 people last block today, and I had 3 of those students in class. So here's my perspective as a teacher. This summer, I proctored the ACT at Mitchell High School, and at this particular time, masks were highly encouraged rather than mandated. As the students filed in one by one, I didn't see anyone wearing a mask. In fact, I even saw a few kids who had a mask put it back in their pocket because they were nervous to put a mask on in front of their peers. Now, were these students trying to be stubborn or mean or irresponsible or unempathetic? No. These were some of our most responsible students. They are level-headed, they're cognizant of other people's feelings and safety. However, even the most responsible and empathetic and educated individuals need guidance from leadership to do the right thing. The following ACT in September was attended only by mask-wearing students with no complaints. The city of Mitchell needs that guidance right now. It's not enough to rely on our citizens to do the right thing because we are imperfect and sometimes we will fail. That's why we have leadership. That is why we have elected each and every one of you. So tonight, I am urging you, Mayor Bob Everson, to immediately implement a mask mandate. I'm also asking the members of our city council to not only hold our mayor accountable, but support him in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sonia Vanderdwick. I actually live in Mitchell Township. I imagine you all have had many more calls and emails for the public over the last 8 months than all of your days on the City Council added together. Everyone has their opinions and fears regarding the coronavirus, and you are in a unique position to be able to impact how those fears and concerns are addressed. This is an especially stressful time for our community and around the world. I want to thank you all for taking your jobs on the council seriously while also juggling the needs of your families and outside careers. And I also want to thank all the healthcare workers who I know have been working extremely hard, including my husband. I am proud to live in a state that since the start of this pandemic has exemplified health freedom and personal responsibility. Governor Kristi Noem has already stated that she would not comply with the Biden mask mandate and that he doesn't have the authority to institute one. In October, she said if folks want to wear a mask, they are free to do so. Those who don't want to wear a mask shouldn't be shamed into it, and government should not mandate it. We need to respect each other's decisions. In Sioux Falls, where too many Mitchell shopping dollars are already being spent, more are likely to go this holiday season. A mask mandate was already turned down last week when Mayor Tenhaken was the deciding vote against a citywide mandate. He previously said a mask mandate would have a limited effectiveness on hospitalization. He has also said enforcing such a mandate would be difficult for the police, noting he would not ask police officers to enforce it. So how does this council plan to enforce such a resolution on the public and on their citizens who have the right to not be discriminated against? And does each person not have the right to refuse a medical intervention that has risks? Because where there is risk, there must be choice. Furthermore, we have never masked up for flu season. If the research was so obvious that masks already protected us against viruses, why did they keep that information from us? In the 2019-2020 flu season, there were 405,000 hospitalizations and 22,000 deaths, as per the CDC in the U.S. In 2018 to 2019, there were 490 hospitalizations and 32,400 deaths from the flu. So are they telling us now that we would have been wearing a non-standard cloth mask every flu season before, that we would have prevented hospitalizations and deaths? If this is so, why did they keep that information from us? I wouldn't think they were doing this maliciously, would you? So we need to ask ourselves, why now? The research actually is obvious that a virus cannot be stopped effectively by the run-of-the-mill cloth mask, and we know that Dwight has already talked about that. 10 studies, however, prove that influenza rates actually increased by 13 times, according to the CDC. If masks are really important, the government would be conducting all sorts of tests on which masks are most effective, and the FDA and CDC would be making recommendations on which to use. If you actually wanted to be protected from the virus, then you would have to don a hazmat-type suit to prevent any airflow contamination. Hospitals use these kind of masks, obviously, to prevent the transmission. Even when we have masked the immunocompromised or at risk to protect them from viral and bacterial infections, we recommended they wear N95s. I was fitted for one when I used to be a nurse. Our bodies are meant to exhale toxins and from our respiratory system for a reason and not to restrict airflow. We all want to be healthy Americans. And to think our school district has had a mask mandate since starting the academic year, and many people have been wearing masks, yet our numbers have been increasing. Does that make sense? Well, what about the PCR testing? Could it be that we are doing more testing than we are seeing so many false positives? Dr. Dolores Cahill, who is a molecular biologist and immunologist, quoted saying that there could be up to 94% false positives. She went on to explain that the number of cycles used with the PCR testing can greatly influence the result. One of the machines I know in town uses 45 cycles, which the CDC recommends less than 33. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't people getting sick. There are people getting sick. Furthermore, the test itself can detect viral and bacterial genetic fragments. Detection of viral RNA may not indicate the presence of infectious virus of SARS-CoV-2 is the causative agent of symptoms. This is from the CDC handbook. Oh, I'm running out of time. Okay, so I'll have to skip some of that. Dr. Carey Mullis, PhD and Nobel Prize winner and inventor of the PCR test, he stated, "You can find almost anything in anybody. It doesn't tell you that you're sick. It doesn't tell you the thing you ended up with is really what is going to hurt you." So with all of this information and more about testing, why are we relying on this test that can be highly inaccurate? In conclusion, we know that from the institution of mask mandates in other countries and states that they don't work to stop the spread. This has not been the case in Sweden. They had no lockdowns, no mask mandates, and the schools remained open. I sent each of you information with graphs on New York, Texas, Georgia, Hawaii, California, Spain, Germany, France, the UK, Australia, Belgium, and Ireland. All of them had increasing cases with mask mandates. Brookings has had a mask mandate, and still their cases rise with quarantines. I realize this is a lot to digest and that many others who work in the medical community will disagree with me. I have learned over the years that we can all do our best when we look at all the data and make more informed decisions. My motto stands that we must make informed decisions and not reactionary, one-sided. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Lucio Margallo. I'm a general internist. I also work as ER for years before I joined the clinic at the Delaney Clinic here in town. And also, I work as, during that time, we work as hospitalist, ER, and full-time clinic, and all those things that people doesn't want to do. In other words, I've done the dirty works too. Ladies and gentlemen, I applaud the lady who was here, Mrs. Johnson. I agree. I think there should be some exceptions. People with some disability, people with lung problems, people who cannot survive with masks, then they should be excused. I also agree that antibiotics is not a treatment for viruses. But most of the time we start with viruses and it's complicated with bacteria. So that's when we start the antibiotics. Just to clarify. Another clarification is that countries like China, Japan, South Korea has mandated masks, and the incidence is much, much lower than us. Our population is about 4% of the world's population. However, the incidence of the infection is about 20%. Before I came in here, I had a really sad news that one of our friends from Mitchell just passed away. There was another friend that passed away last week. Ladies and gentlemen, it's never too late. One life lost is too many. Too many. I remember last June when I spoke with, well, I'll step one more few years back, during the texting considerations ordinance. This group, some of you were there, unanimously approved the testing ordinance. And that saved lives. That saved lives. This simple cloth will save lives. I believe in personal rights. I believe in freedom, democracy. A total of 120 years from my family, direct family, served the Korean War, World War II, POW, and Vietnam War. My two uncles, 30 years in the Navy, it's my father-in-law, POW, World War II and Korean War. My brother-in-law, U.S. Air Force, Vietnam War. My niece is on active duty now for 12 years. Total of 132 years supporting individual rights, freedom, and democracy. But there should be some limits. There should be some consideration, because life and liberty is for all. For all. I'm here to speak to you, gentlemen and ladies, as a member of the Mitchell community, as a father, and as a physician. I support mask mandate because last week alone there are about 1 million cases reported. And it's proven by science, and I will prove it to you. I have the papers, I have the articles published by major universities.
That's your time, Doctor. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and please support this mandate.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to it?
My name is Dr. Brian Charks. I live apparently in Ward 4, but I wouldn't have known that prior to tonight without knowing. But I wanted to stand up here and talk to you about masking and about COVID. To give you a little background, 90% of the patients that I see on a daily basis in the clinic that I work at in Sioux Falls are COVID positive people. I challenge you to think back a year ago and remember at least one person that you know that died from the flu. Okay, now let's fast forward to 2020. I think every single person in this room knows at least one person who has died from COVID, right? I mean, we all know people that have died from COVID. This is a deadly disease. We're not asking people to give up their firstborn child. We're asking them to wear a simple mask. At one point in April, the mayor told me he was listening to the people at Avera and the physicians at Avera and following their recommendations. Well, all we're asking tonight is that you listen to those people. If you don't want to listen to me, listen to who I consider to be one of the smartest men in the room. Listen to Dr. Margallo. Listen to him. Masks will save lives. We're losing people at an alarming rate. These people are sick. One of our x-ray tech's husband, 48 years old, otherwise healthy, he's got horrible scarring on his lungs and still in the ICU after 10 days. It's going to take him months to recover from that. And yet, if he would have been in contact with someone who was wearing a mask, they may have been able to prevent that disease. We've had lots, you can talk about whether the tiny little microns are being absorbed by the mask. Those of us who work with it on a daily basis know that masks work. And without getting into the science of it, we know that the virus is in water particles. Those water particles actually get trapped by the mask. So we can prevent COVID. We can prevent 70% of those virus particles from being excreted by putting on a mask, whether they're a surgical mask or if they're a cloth mask. Admittedly, we use N95s when we're at work, for the most part. I still wear a surgical mask and a face shield when I'm at work, but the N95s aren't 100% protective. I admit that. But 70% is greater than 0%. 95%, which is what we get with an N95, is better than 0. We're just wanting everyone to do what is right. I mean, we're not, like I said, we don't want people to give up their right. We want people to be kind. Wear a mask. And when I walk into a city building, I want the city to protect me as a citizen by requiring masks of its employees. Thanks for your time. I want you to support the mandate.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Arnold. I live, I believe, in the 4th Ward. I'm going to go ahead and take off my N95 mask so that you can make sure that everyone can hear me clearly. We don't all wear N95 masks in our clinic. In fact, I'm probably one of the only ones. We know that masks work. All of our nurses wear the masks. We have it where both people are wearing masks, both the patient's parents, and our nurses, and we maintain a 6-foot distance, and that's all it takes. None of our staff have gotten sick. The only person that has gotten sick in our facility has gotten sick for their own child. The doctor, myself, will wear an N95 mask because I am within 2 inches of your child's face. I am using a tongue blade. They're spitting in my face. They're choking. So this is for my protection. I'm wearing goggles, glasses, so that it protects my vision. The gentleman in the red actually told you the truth. This is aerosolized. So it doesn't work if the person who wants to protect themselves is only wearing a mask, even if they're wearing an N95 mask, because you can get it in your eyes. So if a person wants to protect themselves, views they are at high risk because they are 65 and older, may have other underlying diseases, they will have to wear a mask plus goggles. Goggles are very hard to wear because they fog up. All of us doctors have experienced it, and we've messed around with it. Even the contraptions that we wear with the full-on, full-body hazmat suit and using oxygen is very difficult. Difficult to look into kids' ears with an otoscope because you've got all this barrier. So we're trying to reduce our barriers and get a good exam. So the reason why the mask mandate would help is because not only is the person who's protecting themselves wearing a mask, but the other person is too. You're helping prevent aerosolization. We know for a fact it works. We see it in our clinic. None of our staff has gotten sick, and we're swimming in COVID, swimming in infections. We know the difference because we've allowed schools to choose for themselves. Mitchell has chosen a mask mandate. We look at the high school, they're doing very well. When we're talking to these kids and they've gotten it because they've gone to parties. They've kept their spread rate down. You look at Mount Vernon does not have a mask mandate, and it's spread like crazy. So they're choosing for a different option, and that's okay for them, but they're choosing to allow herd immunity and see what happens. Well, we know what's happening in Mitchell, and we're all telling you that we're being overwhelmed. If we make a decision now, we can affect the impact 2 weeks from now. What do we do when there's not enough ventilators? And I think that we don't understand this illness properly. Everyone thinks of it as a head cold, a cough, a sore throat, a headache. It's not that. It actually causes little tiny mini strokes, little tiny scabs that spread throughout your body. It is killing your lungs, your heart, your kidney from the outside. So now you have dead lung, and then you have healthy lung. What happens when influenza comes? That's what we don't know for the kids, because they are strong. They are doing good with the COVID, but when we kill part of their lung from the outside with the COVID, and then we give them an infection, and we got mucus on the inside, whatever healthy lung they have left, are they going to survive? Does it come to our kids? Now, we're not saying that these are going to completely prevent things from being spread. We're saying it's going to slow the spread. Help us help you. Help us be able to stay on top of it so that there's enough ventilators to go around. I have relatives in Washington. A lot of the females in my family go into the healthcare position. They actually do a triage. They've taught all us doctors to do a triage. In Washington, they did not even try anyone 70 and older. In Mitchell, we care and love all. We are trying to save our elderly. Allow us to keep doing that. My vote is for a mask mandate, but I do think that we need to keep it within realization. You know, drinking establishments, places where you eat, yeah, if you're eating, you have the potential to be exposed. So allow those areas to be non-mask mandated, but allow people to choose protection. If we don't smoke in the grocery store, why can we not use a mask? As far as influenza, we have a vaccine for influenza. That's why we don't do mask mandates. You can choose to get a shot. You'll still catch the flu, but it won't be as bad as it would have been without it. Can we wait until we have a vaccine? Just a couple of months of using a mask mandate, or even please just give us 2 weeks with the mask and see what happens.
That's your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tim Goldhammer. I live in Ward 1. I'd like to start by saying thank you, Steve. I'm happy that I'm not in your position right now. So I appreciate you winning the election and all the efforts that you'll all make in this tough decision. Moving to a mask mandate won't be something simple. It won't be accepted. It won't be loved by all. But the loved ones that we'll save by doing it will be appreciated, and eventually, hopefully we can look back and say that we made the right decision tonight. I was a little late, so I don't know what was all said, so I only wanted to come and tell you that as somebody who enjoys going out, enjoys doing things, I would like to do whatever we can to stop or slow the spread. Right before I came, or the reason I was late, I am the board president for the community theater across the street. We have voted to suspend theatrical productions to try and do our part to stop the spread. We hope that you would take that baton and do the same, so that way we could continue to provide theater for Mitchell. We're hoping that the numbers can get into a place where they're well capped, plateaued, and then we see a decrease in active cases in Mitchell and Davison County, so we can continue to put on great theater productions for this town. But don't feel that our patrons, actors, staff, or any supporters will come out to productions in the quantities that we need to be successful, and we're not willing to put those people at risk with the current COVID numbers. So I hope you would support the mask mandate, and I appreciate the difficult choice you have to make tonight, so thank you.
Thank you.
I have 4 comments online again. The first one, and I have told everyone that they have to state their name and their ward because I'm not repeating everything on here. Brad Osterloo, sorry if I'm saying names wrong, Ward 1, you were supposed to be leaders. Let's listen to medical professionals and do what's right. We had Adam Meany, oh, I'm sorry, he didn't state his ward. Matthew Ramus, and I live in Ward 2. I support the mask mandate. We should be listening to the doctors and healthcare workers in Mitchell. And then the last one was Matt Culhane. I live in Ward 3. My family and I support a mask mandate because we care about your grandparents and children. We care about you. We care about our community. Oh, my name is Matthew Rames, and I live in Ward 2. I support... I'm not reading that one. Mallory Early, and I live in Mitchell. My family supports a mask mandate as we want to keep your family safe as my high-risk little boy and to support healthcare workers. We care. My name is Kim Brugger, and I live in Ward 1, and my family asks the council to please support a mask mandate. Please listen to the medical professionals in our community. Sorry about the other one in there.
Okay, is there anybody else in the audience who wishes to address us?
Hey guys, Jason Merink. I believe I'm in Ward 3. I would be one that does not support any type of restriction on freedom. I hear a lot of numbers being thrown around, and I realize that we do have medical professionals here, but if everybody knew exactly what was going on, we wouldn't be in this position. That mask does not block any droplets from getting into you. There's a lot of misinformation going around here. I'm worried about our kids that have been in masks ever since the school year started. Why do we have so many kids getting sick? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because you put those cloth masks on. I think you're going to have a real problem if you try and enforce any type of mask mandate and take away any freedom from the people. Matter of fact, I know you will. I don't envy your guys' position having to make these decisions. But just realize that, you know, you're going to give one side a choice, give the other side a choice too. That's how America works. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Can you tell us what was your name? Did you tell us and what ward you're in?
Jason Myring.
Ward 2.
Ward 3.
Okay.
Okay.
My little short legs have a hard time with those steps. I'm Diane Kinkle. I'm a nurse practitioner here in Mitchell. I've been a nurse for longer than a lot of these people have been alive. I'm frustrated with the fact that people think that a mask mandate would be difficult to enforce, because that's really not the issue, Mayor. What really is the issue is if you guys stand up and say this is what we would suggest, it didn't work, right? We have hundreds of people getting sick every day. If you do a mask mandate, people will know that it's serious. People will hopefully wear the mask, just like they stop for a stop sign when there's no one around. Hopefully, we would be able to get the people to see that this is something that they can do, even though it seems we have to make it a have to. Every single day I come to work and I have more and more positive COVIDs. We heard from Rochelle telling us about the stress on the hospital, and it is very real. It's really scary as a provider to come to work and have very ill people and know that there might not be a hospital bed for you. I've had people that need fluids because part of the COVID can make you have vomiting and diarrhea. And we don't have a good place at the hospital if they're positive COVID to give them fluids. There's more to this than just ventilator cases. I've had patients this week who had COVID 5 and 6 weeks ago, and now I'm sending them to the pulmonologist in Sioux Falls because they're still struggling. Just because you live through it doesn't mean it's not going to affect you for a long time. Please consider the mask mandate and some type of social distancing as well. It will be good for all of us, and hopefully it will help the people that are so against masks to realize that we're not trying to take away their firstborn, like Brian Chark said. We're just trying to get them to see that they can make a difference. They can help save lives just by wearing a mask. It's not hard to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have 3. Hold on. First one after Matt. Okay. Sorry, I had to block a bunch of people that were talking about eating masks. My name is Annie Woods Manzi, and I live in Ward 1. As an educator to your children, whom I care for so deeply, I am in favor for a mask mandate. In order to stay safe in school, we must listen to our medical professionals. I've got Jessica Steidel. She says she lives in the Woods Addition. I would like a no vote on the mandated masks. Oh, sorry, Annie's got interrupted. We as educators want to stay in school as much as you do. This is the only way that we can make this happen. We care so much about our students. This is something the community can benefit from. That's all.
Okay. Anybody else in the audience want to talk? Okay.
I just have a few things I wanted to say. I wanted to start by saying that I believe in freedom and liberty, and I believe in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and without a doubt, I think that those are important things. But I also believe that with those rights and those freedoms, there comes personal responsibility and the responsibility to help protect the health and safety of our neighbors, our loved ones, our friends, and our community. I spent quite a bit of time this weekend visiting with the city manager and one of the councilmen in Brookings. It seems like they have been able to put into place a mask mandate that has been quite effective. In fact, they sent me this chart, and actually, sadly, Mitchell is kind of what Brookings compares themselves to see how well they're doing and I guess how poorly we're doing. In the last 7 days, Brookings ranked first. I guess this is kind of hard to say. Out of the top 10 largest communities in the state, they had the least number of cases in the last 7 days, and we have the most. And that's per capita, just that's important to know. As you all know, and I'm sure you've been following like I have, the increase in cases, 86 active new cases, or 779 active cases on Friday. This would be Saturday with 86 new cases. Sunday, we were up to 838 active cases and 67 new cases. And today, 821 active cases and 42 new cases. I don't think there's any question that what we have been doing isn't working. And that's what I want to say is that we've now given no masks a really good college try. We've given us a chance to see if that works. And guess what? It's not working. So I think we just have to. Personally, I don't want to lose any more friends. I don't want to lose any more neighbors. So I think that we just have to do what we need to do to step up and start preventing these cases from rising. I know that there's been a lot of concerns about enforcement. The two things I keep hearing are enforcement and exceptions. And so I kind of had worked through this, and I looked at the Brookings ordinance, and they really, and Brookings and Huron. Huron is meeting tonight, and their ordinance really made a lot of sense to me as well. But I have some amendments, and I don't know how exactly is the best way to do this, but I have some recommended amendments that we could make to the ordinance 2020-13 that is in our packet that would, so can I just share some of those amendments? Okay. So if you go to the now therefore be it ordained portion, number 1, effective immediately upon publication of this ordinance after adoption, every person is required to wear a cloth face covering over such person's nose and mouth at all times. Within indoor businesses and indoor public places where 6 feet of social distancing cannot be achieved or maintained, with the exception of when you're eating and drinking. So I know that's a lot, but basically it's saying if you're indoors, if you're in a public place and you can't maintain social distancing, or you can't achieve it or maintain it, with the exception of when people are eating.
So in essence, you're looking at any indoor facility, any city-owned or private would require it.
Yes, this would take out, yes, this would take out the city-owned.
For instance, in Texas, if you go into a restaurant, you wear it in. When you're seated, you can then take it off since you're going to be.
Exactly, 100%, yes. If you're seated and eating or having a meal or having a drink or whatever, you do not have to be wearing this for obvious reasons. Or if you're in a movie theater and you don't, you're eating popcorn or whatever.
Go slow so Mr. Johnson can make these changes.
Okay.
I'm doing my best.
Okay, I can hand these to you if you want. So then there were already some exceptions that were included. They were, because when we were talking about this being just in city facilities, we did talk about as an athlete in recreational activities, as a swimmer, provided that they maintain 6 feet of separation, as an employee in an employee's own office, and then John's idea was for D to be in an office where 6 feet of distance can be maintained. So as an example, I think we were thinking of like in the city offices here where there are people who have offices that are desks that are 6 feet apart. They would be able to, I guess, unless they're talking to people. And I don't know how you feel about that one. That might be one that we want to discuss.
Okay, let me make sure I'm understanding this.
Yeah.
So you're saying if you're in an office with multiple people and you are able to keep greater than 6 feet apart, you could take the mask off? Or you?
We had talked about that. How do you feel about that?
Right now, that's the way the city's policy
That is what the city's, that's what we had talked about.
Yeah,
That
if
was
a
an
person
ad-
can maintain 6 foot of distance, you don't need a mask, like you guys. Or if you're working in your office by yourself, you don't need a mask.
Okay.
Those are the exceptions we were talking about.
E would be if you're under the age of 5. F would be if you have a medical condition, mental health condition, or disability that makes it unreasonable for the individual to maintain a face covering. So I think that those kind of cover the majority of the exceptions that, yes. F, yes.
Susan, I might be able to save you some trouble. It sounds like these are coming out of the Sioux Falls resolution.
They're actually coming from Brookings, who I think that Sioux Falls took them from Brookings, but yes, they are.
Do you have that
I saw that.
Brookings one, Justin?
I do. I don't know if Stephanie can pull it up here. But.
Yeah, and I can give you a copy of that as well. The other concern that people have is enforcement, and one of the things that Brookings has done is that when a person is not wearing a mask and they've been reported, the police officers go to them, they give them a flyer that is an educational flyer on why there are masks, why masks are important, and then they give them a mask. And to date, they have not had to issue any citations or impose any fines. So what they say, their verbiage in their enforcement portion, and I could read it directly, but it does, basically they say it may result in a fine, and if you have multiple violations, then there would be further enforcement procedures, including legal action. So I like that verbiage because I think, you know, the most important part of this is that we are doing this to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And we're doing this to protect the lives of the people around us. And it shouldn't be something that is a vicious fight all the time. And I love that you know, what they did in Brookings, it just was education, and they said that for about a week there was a few people that balked, but now it's become normalized, and I think that's such an important part of this, that, you know, these things, if they were the norm, I think that it would go a long way in preventing the spread. I think right now there's a lot of times, and I can speak personally, that there are times when I'm reticent about wearing a mask to a place because I fear that I might be the only person wearing one, or I feel like I'm going to stick out in the crowd or whatever. But when I go to the grocery store, you know, this is on, and when I'm in a customer's house and other places, I wear it. I wear it because I care, and I'm concerned about the possibility of me spreading that. So the other portion of this that I think we need to address would be on number 5. It says this ordinance shall remain in effect until amended or repealed by the City Council, except that the mayor may order the temporary suspension of the provisions of this ordinance one time for the purpose of bringing the matter of this ordinance's repeal or continuance before the City Council. And I think that's fine. I think that it should be something that you know, a lot of the communities, including Brookings, reviews theirs every 60 days, or I guess if as needed, but it's regularly on their agenda for every 60 days they take a look at it and see how they're doing. I think that I'm comfortable saying let's just leave it in effect, and then if we start to see, we don't need to wait 60 days, if we start to see that there's a huge decline in our cases, which wouldn't that be great? Or there's a vaccine. That's probably a more realistic thing because we can't just stop wearing the mask just because we have a reduction in cases. Obviously, that's what our goal is, but we wouldn't want to take them off and have it go up again. But I lost my train of thought. So yeah, I guess if that's what it was. So if we notice that there's a vaccine and we're getting this virus under control, then by all means we wouldn't need to wait the 60 days in order to repeal it or have the mayor, you know, bring it to the council. And I would like, no change on 5. We would leave that as is. I just didn't want you to look at the Brookings model and think that that's what I was suggesting. I think that I like our number 6 better. And I would like to just say to Bob, I think that this is something that we need to act on sooner rather than later. And I know that this is something, an ordinance takes time, but I know that you also have the ability to make that
an emergency order, yes.
Yeah, an emergency order, and so I would respectfully request that you consider doing that tonight so that we can start collectively as a community stemming the tide and knocking off some of the terrible tragedies that we're witnessing in our community.
I think I would like to see how it all gets written before I issue it as an emergency order. So it wouldn't happen tonight, but it could possibly happen tomorrow.
Go ahead. I think we all can agree that what is happening in Mitchell now is not working. With the numbers as we see them, especially the last 10 days, I don't know if people just got complacent, if they got tired, if whatever the case may be. We've seen the numbers and we've heard about the deaths, obviously. But I've got a question for Justin. Is this particular ordinance that we were considering tonight was relayed to the public as city-owned facilities? And we're completely transforming this ordinance now without having the public knowledge of this. So in the past, I know we've been able to tweak and make small adjustments, but then and I'm, you know, I just want your opinion to see is, okay, is this a major change that we have not let the public know at this point in time, or what is your opinion?
Yeah, so hopefully the mic is close enough here, but I'll kind of just walk you through the procedure. So what you're talking about, where we've had issues where we may have had to bring an ordinance back for an additional reading because there's been substantial changes, that's only required if those substantial changes are done at the second reading. So right now, we're at the first reading phase. We're still going to have a second reading at least 5 days from now before this could be adopted. So if you make substantial changes tonight, we only have to go that additional one meeting. We don't have to start over from square one and have two more, as long as there aren't substantial changes at the next meeting as well.
Justin, how do we get around that where we can get this enacted quicker if that's what we decide as a group to do, rather than wait 5 days? 5 days is another 500 people. I'm not anxious to wait. Can he make a decision?
Yeah, the mayor would have the ability to do that, and I'm not going to speak for Bob, but I think if there's a consensus among the council, he may be more likely to exercise that authority. But outside of the mayor exercising that authority, really there's nothing we can do. You know, it's written in stone in state law, so it's either the mayor chooses to exercise that authority or the governor chooses to exercise authority.
So we would have to get it written up. So these changes would have to be implemented. We would read it, and then if the consensus here is you want to have this go forward, I could issue the emergency order tomorrow or as soon as we can get this thing put together.
I'm much more in favor of tomorrow versus 5 days from now, or the next meeting 2 weeks from now. The sooner, the better.
Mr. Mayor, I guess I've got a couple comments. One, I'm in favor of you trying to get some wording and get it tomorrow or Wednesday or something, not 5 days or first and second reading from an ordinance standpoint, so an emergency declaration. One of the other things I'd like to try and avoid the controversial part and any other question, and I'd like to look at defining the mask as the Brookings ordinance does, saying a mask must cover nose and mouth completely, can include paper or disposable mask, a cloth mask, scarf, bandana, or neck gaiter. It avoids the wording that is currently in that ordinance that says a 2-ply cloth mask. And I don't think we're going to have people go up and pull somebody's mask off and say, hey, does yours have 2 layers on it? That's not the intent of what we're trying to do. The other part, and I've looked at what Sioux Falls might be proposing again and whether it passes or not, is that the emergency order also talk about social distancing and hygiene as well, because independent items by themselves I don't think are effective. It's got to be all of the things together from that standpoint. And I guess I don't have an issue with saying city and public facilities. I've read another city's possible proposal that talks about masks indoor, outdoor, and any time you're in any facility, in any enclosure that you can't social distance, and I take that as meaning that you'd have to wear a mask in your own house. And I don't want that to be implied in any way either. And I guess I'll just give the rest of my speech of what I was thinking. I'm a person that thinks you should take personal responsibility, and I believe everybody should do that. And if you would ask me a month ago about masking, I probably would have said I'm not for it. But as I've tracked the numbers since last April, and we doubled and doubled and doubled from the middle of October until now, The math at that point tells me that whatever we're doing is not slowing it down. Whether you believe masks will help individually, I'm not sure they will, but in combination with everything else, it gives us a shot. I had hoped that people would take the responsibility amongst themselves to do that, and I don't know if Amy's still here. Yeah, she's here. I was at the Dakota Wesleyan basketball game, and it was eye-opening to me. It changed my mind on some of this. So I sat in the stands. GPAC, the Great Plains Athletic Conference, requires that for Dakota Wesleyan to put on an event, you have to, mask is required. It's not an option. If you're going to be there and they're going to have an event, masks are going to be required. They leased the Corn Palace. The Corn Palace made everybody have a mask on when they came in. And at the end of the third quarter of the girls' game, I thought to myself, I'm just going to try and take account and count the amount of people I see that don't have a mask on at all or have it on improperly. And after I got up to 50 people, I just thought to myself, if you're going to come and sit in the stands and not follow the rules, just don't come to the game. You're putting Dakota Wesleyan in jeopardy of hosting any events for anybody to do anything. And I saw Dr. Novak and Tom Hook walk up to several people, and a couple of them a couple times, asking them to put their masks on. And it doesn't matter whether you had COVID before or whatever, the requirement to go to the game was that you had to wear a mask. And if you had a health condition, then don't go to the game because you should have known that you had to wear a mask. And these people put their masks on, and as soon as Dr. Novak and Tom Hook walked away, they took their masks off. I mean, almost immediately. And if that's the kind of self-cooperation I'm hoping to expect from citizens of Mitchell, then I don't know if I have a choice but to listen to, and I've listened to comments on both sides for a long time, but if people aren't even going to take the personal responsibility to know the rules and attend an event and then purposely violate the rules, then we got to try something different. And so I'm hoping that we would do something, get the wording correct, try and be as good as possible in outlining or defining exceptions. I also have the concern about the enforcement, and I really like the Brookings flow chart, and I don't know if people have seen it. It's just kind of, here's when you need to have a mask on. And it kind of tries to follow CDC guidelines. If you're inside and you're not around anybody, you don't need a mask. But if you're inside and you have potential of interacting with people, a mask is required. It's easy to understand, and I believe education is needed. That's the end of my speech.
Well, I sat here. I listened to people who I trust, people that are experts. I think are experts in the field. They say masks will help. I know last spring, closing down businesses was awful. That was a horrible, horrible decision to make. This one, to me, is a pretty easy decision to make. It's, e-learning. If we're very close to that, I heard today on the radio, Madison is going to it from I hope this is correct, from Thanksgiving to after the first of the year. That's just probably the start of it. Once you have e-learning, that means no sports. Kids went last year without sports, without track, spring sports, golf, no proms, no graduations. I thought it was awful. So it was awful for the parents, for the kids. This is something we can do. I'm hoping it helps. We're number one in the nation. I read in the news. Flash is number one in the nation for the highest risk state right now. I don't want to close bars. I don't want to close restaurants, workout places. A mask is a small price to pay to keep places open. People are trying to make a living. And it's going to be a long, long winter when I'm in that field. It's going to be horrible this winter to try to survive. If we have e-learning, it's going to take somebody's 5th grade and under. Who's going to stay home and teach them? That means one of the parents have to stay home. So you're talking less income. You're talking people who are not filling jobs. We had a friend of mine die today. COVID, he was healthy. It's serious. This is serious and something needs to be done. I'm hoping masks help. I'm hoping our numbers go down. Unfortunately, it's going to be tough. It's no different than no shirt, no shoes, no service. Yes, it's different, but you don't see anybody going to a steakhouse and somebody being bareback in there. It's got to get done. I mean, we don't arrest them, we don't shoot them. But, I've never been in a steakhouse and seen somebody bareback. Totally different story, maybe a little too sarcasm. I had 100% of people contact me, 100% in favor. People I don't know, people emailed, people text. I had 0 contact me. And if they did, I apologize, but I don't remember it. We just need to slow this down. I want schools to stay open. I want bars, I want food establishments, retail. I don't want anything closed down. And the biggest thing is I don't want people sick. And I'm hoping this helps. Those that are professionals in this, say it's going to help. I'm trusting that. Education. We need to get this out, no matter which way we decide to go. Naturally, you can tell by me I'm in favor of masks. I think we need to put a deadline. People like to put deadlines on things. People want to know. I like where Watertown's set. To the first meeting of the City Council in 2021, unless extended. But people want to know deadline. They don't want people. People don't want stuff to go on forever.
I would also like an exit comment or strategy or something in the...
And if it's helped and we're not there, it says unless extended. That date, I'm not sure on. I mean, you're talking vaccine, you're talking whether this helps, how quick it helps. It's proven in places it has helped. I don't know, but anyway, that's why I'm in favor of this. And we need to slow this down.
I can tell you that I've had firsthand with COVID. 5 weeks ago, I had COVID. My wife had it first. She was hospitalized for 3 days. Back on oxygen for 3.5 weeks at home. Never went anywhere. I was not hospitalized, but I was at home for, I believe, 8 to 9 days. If I can prevent one other person from having it, I will. And I think this mandate, masking, is necessary, and just as soon as we can do it, let's do it. Let's get it done this week. Bob, if you don't want to sign it Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, let's have a council meeting again within 5 days afterwards.
I'm going to spin off a little bit of that. Tonight when I sat down here, obviously on the agenda, the ordinance was about city facilities. Several people that I visited with obviously spoke on behalf of a city mandate, and then there's ones that voted or spoke with me on just the city offices being part of what the ordinance was said to the public. I've always gave the first reading, no matter what my vote may be at a later date, I've always gave the exercise right of a first reading to give the due diligence for our citizens to speak back to us. The ordinance was incorrectly published to our citizens of Mitchell. Now we want to make a change tonight. I'm not opposed to making the change tonight, but I believe there's another side that has the right to stand on that podium and speak to us 8 council members. And they're not here tonight because they weren't aware of it, because the way the ordinance was established. I think if it was written the way that Susan, you'd like to have it changed, and a few other ones here, I believe we're going to have a different audience sitting in this arena here this evening. It's probably still going to have the votes for yes and maybe votes for no, but there's going to be a lot of different people sitting up here because they're going to speak on behalf of their businesses and stuff like that. And I just think they have the right to sit here and give us that. We've always gave everybody the due diligence to speak on behalf of that. The other cities that have these mandates in place, they gave the community the right to speak to them. We're not doing that tonight. And now if Mr. Mayor, you'd like to enforce the rule, that's what the mayor will do. I always stand behind the mayor in his decision. All as I'm saying is I stand behind the citizens also speak to me. And I didn't get any calls from any business people. You know why? Because they didn't know it was about that tonight. They thought it was for city facility. And that's all I'm asking. I think we need to put an ordinance in place that is read the proper way that you would ask Susan or whatever it may be that we agree on. But I think we need to give other people the opportunity to come up here and speak. And that's all I'm asking for. And if it's in 5 days or whenever we have to have a special meeting, I'm all for having a special meeting and come back in here and sitting and listen again to people repeat themselves or let the other people that have not had a chance to speak. That's all I'm going to speak out for. So.
Okay. Did you have anything to add?
I don't want to jump on anybody else's toes if there's any other council members that wanted to speak up. If not, I was just going to make the suggestion here that I don't want anybody to jump to conclusions here, but if we could table this to the last item of the agenda tonight, I'll take a couple minutes without people talking into my ears, type up the changes, and I can come back at the end and we can vote on those amended changes, and then we could have that version ready for next week.
I think to Mr. Barrington's point, though, the way it was published, it looked like it was going to be for city buildings. So he feels there's a faction that's not represented here.
Correct.
May have been here. I think what we could do is like we did the original emergency ordinance, pending council approval. Isn't that what? The one in March that we originally did.
I guess I'm not following you, Mayor. I know that in March initially, you imposed the executive order,
yes,
and then the council came back and then ratified that action with an ordinance.
Yes. The same situation could happen, which would allow people to come speak when the ratification comes up.
Right, but what I'm saying is if we don't adopt the amendments tonight, whatever they may be, then we're going to have to take 2 additional meetings from now.
Okay.
So we're going to add a week to the
Now I
timeline
see
if
what
we
you're
don't
saying.
adopt
Gotcha.
the changes tonight.
Right.
Because you'll still have the people can still come back in a week or
Okay.
whenever that next meeting is, and they can give whatever commentary they want to give, but they'll have that new version available in front of them.
Make sense?
As long as everybody has the correct ordinance, published correctly, and everybody has the right to speak on both sides.
So if you give me a few minutes, that's what I'm going to try to put back in front of you here, and, however long it takes for you guys to work through the rest of the agenda.
We got a few items to cover yet.
It was on the city buildings. What are we going to do about that? Are we just going to, we're going to put that in the ordinance you're writing up now?
I'll give you a summary of the changes that I've heard so far that I would be working on here. So from what I was hearing, it sounds like they want to, or the council would like to expand it from beyond city-owned facilities to something like what's in the Brookings ordinance, which if you can, I don't know, Stephanie, if you've got that available, but it says those locations.
Indoor businesses and indoor public places where 6-foot social distancing cannot be achieved or maintained.
Correct.
With the exception of eating and drinking.
So I got a question. If somebody's up at the rec center jogging on a treadmill, do they need to have a mask on if they're?
I'm sorry, Kevin.
That was one of the
the
exceptions was athletic sports.
So like the rec center itself, that's what I'm concerned, because people
me?
are texting me, asking me about if the rec center itself, if they go to the rec center and work out, or let's say they're lifting weights or they're on a treadmill or they're, whatever they're doing up there.
What if they can assure that they're going to be, nobody's going to be within 6 feet of them?
And I think that would,
I mean, they'll come in with a mask on, they'll go do their workout with the mask off.
Because that's how the
and then-
Brookings is, if you're going inside.
that's what I was going to say here, Jeff, is that if you adopt the, most of the language that the Brookings ordinance has, it says must wear a face mask covering in indoor businesses and indoor public places where 6 feet social distancing cannot be achieved or maintained. So if they're going in to work out and they can be 6 feet apart, then the mask is not required.
Okay.
I've got another topic before Justin leaves, though, whenever you guys are done with this ordinance.
Go for it.
Go for it. This afternoon, Stephanie, you sent out what we think is a proposal for Sioux Falls.
The Municipal League sent out a email to first-class municipalities that just showed what they were reconsidering. They did make some changes and they brought it back. I believe that they're taking the penalties out of their ordinance to see if it would be more palatable. I can pull that up if you need me to.
That would be great if you would.
That's from the conference call this afternoon?
So as you're pulling that up, Justin, this one happens to be a resolution versus an ordinance.
Correct. And I guess the primary difference would be enforceability and penalties.
Because the penalties are being taken out of Sioux potentially. Again, we don't know if this is what they're going to act on tomorrow or at least talk about, but this is what we think is going to be. So my next point on this is it says the resolution of the City of Sioux Falls outlining the expectations for the people of Sioux Falls to take action to slow down the spread of the virus that causes COVID-19. The key word there, I think, is expectations.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, they're not doing anything that's necessarily a mandate, and there's not a penalty for not following it.
Okay. I just wanted to make for sure that I was reading that correctly. Okay.
And Watertown's considering no penalty in their wording.
And I do like the addition that Watertown has of outside when 6 feet distance cannot be maintained. I don't know if that's something that we want to add, but I did appreciate that because certainly it can be spread outside if we're all snuggled together. So. And the other thing I just wanted to say is that I think that sometimes we think about masking as being something that's going to infringe or impede a business's ability to be successful. And the way that I see it is that by masking, the odds of us being able to keep businesses open are exponentially better than if we just keep going in the trajectory that we are right now, where we have so many cases that at some point we may be forced to close down as we did previously. So I look at what we're doing with recommending masks or mandating masks, as being something that is very pro-business and very pro-economy, because it's going to be something that will hopefully allow us to keep businesses open and operating and give people the confidence to be able to shop and go into those establishments.
So I guess before I go and make any changes here, I just kind of want to run through the list and make sure that I'm not missing anything that we've discussed so far. First thing here is it sounds like the council would like this to extend beyond just city-owned facilities.
Can you speak a little bit louder?
Sorry. And instead borrow the language from the Brookings ordinance that discusses indoor businesses and indoor public places where 6 feet social distancing cannot be maintained. We've also got some additional exceptions, or maybe conflicting exceptions here, but I know we specifically talked about children under the age of 5, individuals who have medical conditions or disabilities, preventing them from safely wearing a cloth face covering, individuals who are actively participating in an athletic or sporting event, or individuals who are actively consuming food or drink. In section 5, I believe we had some wanting it to stay the same, some wanting it to be a fixed term.
I guess I'd like some sort of exit strategy. It doesn't have to have a date. One of them said 31 days after enactment. Another one said the first meeting in 2021. Could be 60 days after. Could be reviewed every council meeting. Something so that it doesn't become stagnated and not be able to be brought up.
Could review at the second council meeting of every month.
Yep.
This is probably another situation where I'd look to the Brookings language. It says, ordinance shall remain in effect for a period of 60 days, at which time it shall be automatically repealed unless specifically readopted for an additional period of time by the council. And it also says any dates identified in this ordinance may be adjusted at any time within the 60-day period covered by this ordinance by a resolution of the council. So that would give the council some flexibility to alter those timelines in a single meeting if necessary. So that, if we want to move to a fixed timeline, that's the language that I think gives us the most flexibility. So if there's, I can build that change in and we can come back to it and discuss it. Okay. And then I believe the last suggestion I heard was if there was a desire to include anything on hand washing, other hygiene practices, or other social distancing in situations other than we've already discussed.
Correct.
And
I also, that the mask definition used the Brookings.
Correct, yep.
Mask must cover nose,
Sorry, I skipped over that one. And then also the enforcement language that Susan suggested. I missed one of my boxes here. If we're going to be doing, I guess I can build in language that would recommend that hand washing and other hygiene practices, but if we're going to be doing any enforcement on any of that stuff, then I think that's more than I can do in the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, that's.
You know, Brookings had a pretty extensive, I mean, they went through every single expectation that they had in terms of grocery stores, how many people could be in their businesses and things like that. I don't know that we need to go to that extent, at least not at this point, but to do something to express the need for good hygiene and social distancing and those kinds of things, I think that's certainly appropriate. They, as you can see, talked about when things needed to be sanitized, and I think that at some point we need to just, I think everyone understands that those things need to be done. But we're dealing with what the expectation is for the public, so I think that those requirements would be a positive addition.
And I guess I won't take a position on, you know, how useful they might be, let's say, but as to whether they're required or recommended,
right.
You know.
Yeah, how do you enforce whether someone's washing their hands?
Right, so I think if we're planning to make changes tonight, I can build in some recommendations, but if we're going to be getting into requirements, then I think that's more extensive than I can do here in a couple of minutes, so.
I'm happy with that.
I'd like to clarify, we're going to try to get this enacted sooner rather than later, and then be able to address Marty's concern of having more input from other concerned folks that maybe did not know what's going on?
Right, so if we're following the process that I laid out earlier, we would adopt these amendments tonight. We would set a special meeting, depending on council availability, as early as next Monday, and then we would have to publish the adopted ordinance at that time. Now, the people that may not be here tonight that would like to come and speak would be able to do that next week at the special meeting before anything was, finally approved by the council.
But the mayor could enact this emergency in an emergency situation or setting sooner rather than the next Monday and then whatever.
Yes, mayor would have that authority, and I guess it's up to him to decide whether that's appropriate.
Well, I would encourage.
But I think what you're asking, John, are you asking whether any kind of restriction would go into effect right away if Mayor Everson enacts something? Or would it be on hold until the second reading?
No,
'Cause
I don't want it on hold. I want it
Right.
enacted and then changes made as we get input from people that didn't get a chance to talk tonight. At the second reading.
And that would be my request as well, that we could have an emergency executive order go into place tomorrow morning or tonight, and then we can act on the ordinance in the order that it needs to come forth.
And I don't know that Bob and I need to have those discussions right now, or that we really can without knowing what the form it's going to take, but he'll have that authority. He can do what he believes is appropriate over the next week, and then next week, if we come back and we don't make any additional substantial changes, it can be adopted at that time. If there are additional changes at that time, it's going to require another meeting after that and potentially another week delay in having anything implemented by the council. During that time, the mayor's order could still stand.
Well, 5 days, 7 days from now is a difference will be made by not acting.
I was hoping we could have something either tomorrow or Wednesday. Marty, I understand your concern, and I had conversations about that today based on how the ordinance actually read and what type of quagmire that might create. But I would like to see and encourage the mayor to enact an emergency ordinance and then work through the rest with input at a meeting, another meeting after tonight, as soon as possible.
So I think the first step would be for me to take a couple minutes, go make these changes, bring it back. We can discuss it at the end of the agenda here, make sure that I'm getting everybody's intent here. You can vote on the amended changes. You can put it on first reading.
And Justin and I will have a discussion in the morning about getting it as an emergency ordinance or order.
I really like Marty's idea, though, of letting people, they'll come in, and Doug's over there, but I like this setting, obviously, too, us being able to spread out. Do we know if next Monday is available, Doug?
With some changes, I have to reach out to some folks first to see. Right now, we have an event scheduled here at 4 o'clock. That's 4 till 6.
Okay, even if we have to go later.
Yeah, I want to give them an opportunity to say, can we adjust?
Yeah. How long does it take to set this up? By the way, thank you for doing that.
Hopefully you don't have to print any paper this time.
No. Okay. Well, anyway, are you guys available next Monday? Council?
Yes.
At the same time, I would rather have a few business owners or some people that might come next Monday to argue their case. I'd rather piss them off than have another 400 or 500 cases come into the hospital. So that's why I'm suggesting let's go quicker rather than later.
Part of the problem with the time frame is the paper no longer publishes every day like they used to. That kind of cuts into how
Yeah, the next paper that we're going to be able to get it in is Saturday, I'll guarantee you.
Probably Saturday,
No,
next
no,
week,
'cause
Saturday.
you'd have to have it in
2 days
today
ago.
to hit Wednesday.
Actually, it'd probably be.
Sam, what's the deadline for our Saturday?
It's typically Wednesday at noon for Saturday's
Yeah, so
paper.
that's what you're going to run up against.
So.
Yeah, which, it's just one of those
That means
things.
if you have your meeting next Monday, you'd be looking at next Saturday for the effective date of it, which would be November 28th.
But I think we need to clarify, because I feel like there's two different conversations that are happening. If the mayor enacts the emergency clause, that goes into effect right away, regardless of publications. Right. But then if council holds a second reading and hearing next Monday, any changes that you want to tweak to that would go into effect on Saturday after the ordinance is published if we meet the deadline by the Wednesday.
Right.
So I just want to make sure everybody's following that same timeline. If the mayor's doing an emergency ordinance, that doesn't follow the publication requirements of a ordinance, because you don't have to do the 2 readings and the effective part.
That I'm encouraging the mayor to make that happen.
And that's why I'm suggesting we get, at least this initial round of changes done tonight so that the mayor has that guidance on what he may include in an emergency order.
Does that make sense?
I was, totally on that page. Yes. I knew the council was not going to be able to make a decision tonight by it at all. I was just saying that we other side people need to have the right to speak.
Right.
The mayor so chooses to do something the next day or two, the mayor so chooses to do what she can do, so. So yes, I think we have the right protocol in place and doing the legal proper way now, so.
I think we let Justin go do his thing, and anybody listening out there or people in the audience, make something happen faster, hound the governor. I mean, she's the one that can make things happen, so reach out to the governor and kick her in the butt and make her do things, if you can.
Are you going to stay here and do that, or are you leaving?
If you want to do that motion to table to the end,
Okay,
last item on the agenda.
So move, table to the end of the meeting.
Motion to table to the end by Mr. Rice.
Second.
Second by Mr. McCardle, that's who I heard. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve applications for renewal of liquor licenses. Any issues with these, Mr. Coster?
Can you
Mike, you're
come
going to
up?
have to come up to the podium, so you can actually come here and use this microphone.
You can sit in the city attorney's spot. He won't be back for a while.
Mayor and Council, Mike Coster, Mitchell PD. Concerning the renewals, we had 4 of the businesses had 1 failure with the alcohol stings this year. That being West Coast Tacos, County Fair, Marlins, and Twin Dragon. 1 other establishment had 2 instances with law enforcement this past year. I believe 1 in January, 1 in April, concerning underage people being in the bar. On 1 occasion, 1 other occasion, they were serving when the bar was supposed to be closed past hours, and that being Dr. Lucky's. Other than that, we have no concerns about the others.
What did the state do with the 2 that were in violation? Twice?
That I do not know, Mr. Allen.
Don't know.
They do still have their license because they are still operating.
And that's acted by the state. Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Allen.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address these? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action award bid for East Central Drainage Phase 2, Drainage Project 2019-39, subject to South Dakota DENR and EDA approvals.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Joe Schrader, City Engineer. Bids were opened on November 5th, 2020 in City Hall Council Chambers at 2 for the East Central Drainage Basin Utility and Street Improvements Phase 2 project. 3 bids were received for bid schedules A and B. The low bid was submitted by First Rate Excavate, Inc. for $3,074,473. That is a difference of $575,684 from the engineer's estimate. Jeff McCormick, the design engineer, provided a recommendation to award to First Rate Excavate. The bid award should be contingent on approval from the South Dakota DENR and the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration. Staff recommends awarding bid schedules A and B contingent on those items to First Rate Excavate for $3,074,473.
Do we have background information on First Rate as far as
Yep, they have
other
worked-
state contracts or municipal contracts that they've done work on?
They are a sizable Sioux Falls contracting firm.
Yep, and they've worked on City of Mitchell projects before, and
Okay.
they're a good contractor.
Any comment as to, it's great news that we're $500,000 under the estimate. Any idea why?
Bids came in good. People were hungry.
People are hungry.
People are looking for work due to the previous discussion.
Okay, I'll move approval to apply or to award the bid to First Rate Excavation, Inc.
Okay, motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Sabers. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve agreement A 2020-45 for engineering services with HDR Engineering for the Ash Avenue CIPP project 2020-12. Mr. Schrader?
Mr. Mayor, Council, this agreement is with HDR Engineering, Inc. To provide services for our West Ash Avenue CIPP project. Services include assisting with the development of technical specifications, assist with bid questions, and complete shop drawing review. We are lining approximately 2,600 feet on West Ash Avenue from east of the bypass to Montana. And we are also lining 10 feet into each sanitary sewer service. Staff recommends approval of the attached agreement with HDR in an amount not to exceed $5,420.
I guess question, and because it's in Ward 1, have the people in this area been notified of this work coming up next year yet, or that's still to happen?
We have not done any formal notices with the residents. We usually do that about a month out before the project starts.
Okay.
And there shouldn't be any issues with their service. They'll have day-to-day service. So, I mean, there shouldn't be any issues as far as maintaining service to them.
Okay, so there won't be service interruption with the...
Minimal. I mean, it'll be door-to-door. Please don't use your restroom for
Okay.
the next couple hours or day,
Okay.
that type of thing.
I'll move approval of agreement with HDR.
Motion by Mr. Rice,
Second.
second by Mr. Allen. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Resolution R 2020-74, a plat of Lot 16 of the Island First Edition, subdivision of Southeast Quarter, Section 31, Township 104 North, Range 60 West, 5th Prime Meridian, City of Mitchell, Davidson County, South Dakota.
Mayor
Mr.
and
Putnam.
council members, thank you. Mayor and council members, this was presented to the Planning Commission at their last regular meeting and did recommend approval. As you can kind of see, if you saw the drawings that are submitted, it pretty much follows the master plan. It's out on the island.
Planning meeting had no issues. I'll move approval of resolution 2020-74.
Motion by Mr. Rice.
Second.
Mr. Barrington. Second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 14 has been removed. Item 15, action to approve Resolution R 2020-76, Standard E911 Service Agreement to be used with the counties. Go for it.
I will try and speak to Mr. Johnson's. We are, as you know, a regional 911 center for 5 counties, that being Aurora, Brule, Lyman, Hanson, Hutchison, and McCook. We have a contract with them to provide 911 services and traffic services to some of those, and that contract period ends at the end of this year. What you have in front of you is the contract that we have proposed with the built-in additional increments for revenue over a 5-year period?
I think these numbers were already agreed to at some point with the E911 users, weren't they?
The annual agreement or the annual operating agreement is really following the standard percentage increases that we've been doing for the past several years. The one item that would be different in this contract goes back to a previous council discussion where we are asking contributions from those contract communities to put towards those capital improvements that the city is doing for the 911 system. Specifically, next year alone, we'll be putting $250,000 into the next gen, is that right, Mike? P25 compliance. And that, the capital improvement fee that's included as part of this contract will have those counties contributing back towards a portion of that expense. The city still takes on the majority, but they do contribute towards that capital expense. And then the annual agreement just goes towards our operations.
Okay, question, then the 2025 or the 2021 value is $11.55. What's the current value? Is it?
It's 8% per year.
Same percentage lower?
Yep.
Okay. My other question, and I think, Stephanie, it goes to your comment about the capital, and then there was like a $3,000 amount or something in there, and we said that's needed over 5 counties. What happens, do we have the ability to adjust that? What happens next year or 2 years from now if we only go down to 2 counties or 3 counties and we still need X amount of capital money to make that up? Can we go back and say, and I'm using an example, we had 5 counties and $3,000 each for $15,000, and next year, or 2 years from now, we only have 3 counties, so do we have the ability to go back and ask them for $5,000 each?
I don't think we'd be able to do that because the way we get down to what the breakdown is, it's really also a percentage of calls. You look at how much of the calls coming in are distributed to the different groups. If we lose one of those counties, the city's going to probably have a larger share of the call traffic coming in, so we're going to have a larger percentage cost tied to it too. But but it's a 5-year agreement, so they're signing on to pay for that for a period of time. So we're really looking at what the current expectation of capital improvements are for the next 5 years. When we get up for renewals, we'll look again at what that actual cost has been and then factor it in on that next agreement.
Okay.
It'll be an ongoing operational
I'm afraid
expense.
it might be more fluid than we hope over a 5-year time frame, and whether we have the ability to adjust or not is, but I don't have an issue with it. We're at least putting the increases in and trying to cover the cost and looking at the traffic and equalizing what our cost versus the cost of providing it for the counties, and try and at least get a fair share so we're not subsidizing all the other counties.
Yep, and really what we did is we asked, we were given an option between 3 or 5-year agreements. 3-year would have been a larger capital contribution, so they just need, because we're continuing that 8% increase per year, they needed a flat amount and a period of time to expect it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll move approval 2076.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Action to approve Resolution R 2020-77, a resolution giving approval to certain sewer facility improvements, giving approval to the issuance and sale of revenue bonds in one or more series to finance directly or indirectly the improvements to the facilities, approving the form of the loan agreement and the revenue bonds, and pledging project revenues and collateral to secure the payment of the revenue bond, and creating special funds and accounts for the administration of the funds for operation in the system and retirement of the revenue bonds, and providing for a segregated special charge or surcharge for the payment of the bonds.
I'm sorry for the longest resolution title ever.
The title's going to take more than the resolution. Okay.
Just for council's background, this is a standard resolution that you need to pass in order to proceed with the SRF financing for the project listed. It does include, and I had that on page 2 of the staff report because the title was too long. It includes $1.5 million of an SRF, and that's for East Central Drainage Phase 2, the one you just considered earlier. That is matched with an EDA grant as well to make up the balance. And then there is $163,000 of non-point source funds that we've used previously for work in Lake Mitchell watershed as part of the financing. Again, what they do is they say if you want to use these non-point source funds, they reduce your interest rate. They take the difference in what you would have paid for interest and they divert it towards those projects. So either way, it costs us the same. It's just a way for us to direct some of that interest we would be paying towards watershed work for Lake Mitchell.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. McCardle,
Second.
second by Mr. Allen. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. First reading on ordinance 02020-14, amending department head titles and departmental organization. Excuse me. This is the public safety department. You got a slide or something you want to explain?
I can walk you through this. I'm sorry, it's a little bit hard for me to see. Really, with this ordinance, we'd be making two changes. The first one, hold on. The first one is we're renaming the Department of Senior Services to Community Services. It's really been functioning that way, I think, since 2015, when a lot of those services I guess they changed. We used to have the Senior Center, and it's now in the James Valley Community Center. We go after more ages than just senior services. I don't know. We used to have the Retired Senior Volunteer Program. Now that's the Mitchell Volunteer Program. Senior Nutrition has been renamed to Adult Nutrition just because they've changed the range of services that they're doing. So the title would reflect what's been in operation since Mayor Tracy made that change, and I believe it was in 2015. The second one would be, and I don't know if this is the best way to see it here as an ordinance or if you'd rather see the staff report. Currently in city code, we have the public safety department. What this ordinance would do is separate those into two departments. We would have the police department and the fire EMS department. Instead of divisions, they would be operating as department heads. As in the past, we've had one chief of public safety. Now you would just have a department head over each one without that chief of public safety. But we did include into each job description that they are required to work towards common shared goals for the entire public safety efforts within the city of Mitchell. I can certainly answer any other questions that council may have, but I guess that's the overview. If you need more detail on walking through the ordinance, we might have to wait till Justin's back because he did draft those changes.
This is first reading, correct?
Correct.
So
first reading. So you'll get it again in 2 weeks.
When we have this back, can you also include the organizational chart?
Oh,
so
yep.
that is visible as part of the update? And have you confirmed that the wage grade levels are all the same yet, or?
I haven't had a chance to communicate that to department heads. It will be a little bit different than what you've seen.
Okay, and so make sure that that's part of the second reading?
Yep, I can have that in there as well. Although I don't want to formally change those job descriptions until you guys consider the ordinance.
Yep.
The other thing to keep in, or for just general public's information, is since Chief still left, was that the summer? It was right after COVID sometime.
June.
It's been a blur since March. We've been operating under this method for since that time, June. And
5 months.
The mayor and I met with all staff in the public safety department, both in fire and police, took feedback without the managers obviously present, and received very good feedback for the potential change from those employees that we visited with.
Move approval of first reading.
Motion by Mr. Rice. Second by Mr. Sabers. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hang loose here for a few minutes till Justin can come back and we can finish this thing. I got to stay. Literally. Oh, man.
Shit, I gotta stop. One
Well, sure, now you're back.
No, I actually believe
We went first on the way down, we stopped in York.
York is not far.
York's but we didn't leave, we left after about 5:30.
Yeah, no matter what. We had a stay because we did a
because they haven't finalized their preparation. That's what they're doing right now. They're gonna look at the draft tomorrow. But that was good for them, the mayor to consider acting as an emergency.
Yeah, we're waiting for everybody else to get back.
No matter what it's coming
God, I hate to say that, you're right. So this is.
Yeah.
Say my own upside down.
I know you did.
Oh, the nose pinch goes on the top.
That's not the
point. Also, I'm like, look at Stephanie.
Cool. Can I get both your names? Justin Johnson.
Susan.
Nice work. It's always something.
Stephanie Elwine is E-L-L-W-E-I-N. And my cell is 605-999-7000.
I hate to make you sit down, but we need to move on.
It's halftime.
Yeah.
It's halftime.
You don't want to watch them lose.
You didn't check the game?
All right.
Hold on, Sam wants in the back row.
Oh. All right, Mr. Johnson, what'd you come up with?
I've got Stephanie pulling up. Uh-oh. No, I didn't. There, I just. Now you should have it.
Sonia is very disappointed.
Need the Jeopardy music again. Okay, so Stephanie's going to be pulling up the changes here, and might be difficult to see as we walk through it here, but if you can kind of flip back and forth between the track changes, I've got it redlined here.
I'd love to, but my knee hurts.
But, so, just on the first page, I adopted some more of the preamble language, just to emphasize kind of the current conditions. They did that as well in the Brookings Ordinance and the Sioux Falls Resolution, just to try to keep things up to date. So I don't think that there's anything.
There you go. As it falls over. Good enough.
Close enough. Okay. So again, that's just preamble language, kind of outlining the current conditions of where we're at with the numbers and everything. So we'll just move right into the meat and potatoes of it. On page 2, I moved the beginning of section 1 up to the line above. It says that effective immediately upon publication. Just move that up out of section 1, and then under section 1 now we have the language from the Brookings Ordinance that says all persons must wear a face covering in indoor businesses and indoor public places where 6 feet social distancing cannot be achieved or maintained. In section 2, we changed the definition to that in the Brookings Ordinance. Now says must be worn to cover the nose and mouth completely, and can include a paper or disposable face mask, cloth mask, scarf, bandana, or neck gaiter. Under 3, we were kind of duplicating our language with the other recommendations that came up tonight, so I just replaced them with the other recommendations. I don't think that there would be anything that is changing there, especially since we changed section 1 to require or to put in that 6-foot condition. Oh, yep, I missed a little section there. So, requirements to wear a face covering shall not apply to, and then it should be a colon there. And then you go right into your exceptions. Correct. Yep. So, Yep, so that's where we moved our exceptions to, is under 3, and I missed a little bit to delete there, so. Under 4, I added the recommendations for the other hygiene practices. So all individuals and businesses are recommended to strictly adhere to CDC hygiene and sanitation practices, including but not limited to frequent washing of hands or use of hand sanitizer and routine disinfection of frequently touched surfaces. Again, that's recommended, that's not a requirement, so we would not be doing any enforcement on that. I took that part out, Susan, because we've got that language in there on athletic and sporting events, and then we've also got that additional language under section 1 that says you don't have to wear one if you're over that 6-foot social distancing. And then moving to section 5, we adopted the enforcement language from Brookings that says violation of this ordinance may result in a fine. Multiple violations may result in further enforcement procedures, including legal action. I did take off in the Brookings ordinance, they have on the end there, legal action to close the business for the safety of the public. I left that language off since ours wasn't specifically tailored toward certain practices businesses would need to do. And then in section 6, I moved it to the 60-day period, then it would be automatically repealed unless council adopts a resolution altering that date. Right, that could be any meeting, it could be a special meeting, and it's only one meeting. Yes. So we'd still have to meet that requirement to post an agenda 24 hours in advance, but then the meeting can happen anytime as long as you meet that.
But if the 60 days lapses, it's repealed automatically, correct?
Unless they extend that period.
Right.
Any concern, thought about the fact that obviously we've seen COVID change daily, weekly, however you want to state it, where it could obviously start going to the positive at some point in time. Any reason why we need to worry about a 60-day? I understand that we can put it on the agenda and all that kind of stuff, and we get it there before Wednesday and it gets published. It's the same reason why we have to do a second ordinance that there was some confusion on. Any reason why we wouldn't just revisit it every, like the mayor I think mentioned one time, every second meeting of every month?
Yep, you can
what's
do
it
it.
going to hurt for us to say,
You can
move
have
the table, nothing's going to change, and we keep the mask mandate? Or at that time, hey, it is time to lift it. It changes so quickly. I just don't know if there's a big issue if it's there at least once a month or maybe every meeting if it's there for discussion.
It can be added as often as you want. So we can just have a resolution ready to go that would terminate it, and we can add that on. We can keep it on there every meeting. We can add it once a month. We can put it on there specifically if requested by council members. There's a lot of flexibility there.
And I think with DW and Mitchell Tech heading home for the holidays, our numbers will drop because I feel a lot of come from the college and from the young people in town. So I think they will drop.
So I think that's all the changes that I had. I don't know if anybody feels like I missed anything or if there were any further changes we wanted to make, but that's kind of where I ended up. With the changes?
Sorry. Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Chark, second by Mr. Sabers. Anybody want to address this? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. We're adjourned.
Yeah, I got it.